When you think about iconic motorcycles, and when you're a child and you drew a picture of a motorcycle, this is basically the bike that you drew without even knowing what it was. Hi folks, Toad here with Visordown.com, and today is a bit of a special day because I am stood in front of a rather special bike. This is the start of it all really. When it comes to Triumph Bonnevilles, this is Genesis, the bike that launched 1,000 studded leather jackets and a lot more. So we are actually here today to talk about some new Triumphs that are being launched, but you can't really look at the modern range of Triumphs without looking at this bike because this is where it all started. And I've got Miles Perkins here from Triumph UK who is going to tell us a little bit about it, because it is, when you think about iconic motorcycles, and when you're a child and you drew a picture of a motorcycle, this is basically the bike that you drew without even knowing what it was. And it is the start of everything within the modern classic range in a way. So talk us through it. I mean, what year is this bike exactly?
So this is a 1959 Triumph Bonneville T120.
Okay.
This came out to replace the previous generation top performance motorcycle, the Tiger 110.
Okay.
110 because it would do 110 miles an hour, T120 because it will do 120 miles an hour, or so they said. And it was named after the Bonneville land speed record that Triumph took in 1956 with 214 miles an hour on the Bonneville Salt Flats, and the American market keenness for more performance to take the level up, married to that great story, led to this bike. And I know it looks like a classic, but actually this isn't a classic. This was the first British superbike really. This was the Bugatti Veyron of its day. It certainly in the US and in Europe, this pretty much changed the face of two worlds. This gave birth to, as you mentioned, the leather jackets. This was where the teenage rocker bike of choice. Twin cylinder, beating the singles, first off the lights, sort of king of the hill, but also on the racetrack. This broke the first 100 mile an hour production lap record at the Isle of Man. The nickname for this bike as a racer was the Thruxton, which came from the Thruxton 500 race series. And I would say that this generated what you could describe as almost all of the modern classic flavours in the early 60s came from this bike, because this bike was the best thing you could buy then.
And it wasn't just the biking public that fell in love with this bike. This was the bike of choice for Hollywood royalty, effectively, wasn't it?
Yes, well, for bikers. So the desert racers took this to create the first desert racing sleds. So they put the high pipes on it. Triumph made a production version, basically the first, or one of the very first, which is the Bonneville TT, T120 TT. That was used in the deserts by people like Bud Ekins to win races with. Steve McQueen used to go riding with him, and he got into it and rode in the ISTD, although they rode on TR6s. They were Bonneville T120s in the international six-day trials of the day. It was used by movie stars to show off their, to ride, but also it had a certain sort of attitude to it. And also even Evel Knievel's first televised breakout, the stuntman, he jumped over Caesar's Palace fountains with a T120, which was nicknamed Colour Me Lucky, which a bit prophetic since he broke more bones than anyone, I think. But yeah, no, this really made its mark, and it sort of gave birth to the scramblers, the bobbers, the cruisers, and of course the cafe racers. That sort of teenage weapon meets track racing story. They all came from this. And
you couldn't really, I mean, I couldn't imagine a Triumph range without a Bonnie in it.
No.
Could you? It wouldn't work. You couldn't not have a Bonneville in the Triumph range.
No, we've got some fantastic names and brands in Triumph, the Daytonas, the Street Triples that we're Moto2 racing, the Tigers, but the Bonneville I think is the name most synonymous with Triumph around the world. It's been in almost continuous production. So our modern era started in 2001, but actually the Bonnevilles continued to be produced between the fall of Meriden and the start of the Hinckley Triumph. And since then, we've sold 367,000.
From 2001?
2001.
Okay.
In the fact, I couldn't begin to imagine how many have been produced since 1959.
Yeah.
Certainly probably right up there with the highest selling twin of all time, maybe.
Yeah.
Up in that sort of top list versus a few other names. Very influential motorcycle, and today it's this essence and this character that lives on, but in a range that's actually designed to be today's version. So as good a motorcycle as the name deserves.
But authentic to the brand.
But authentic. So you've got the what have you got? The British twin engine. You've got that silhouette. You've got the knee cutouts.
Yep.
And in the case of the more classic bikes in the family, the bench seat is part of that design. And interesting though, the very first model, which is what this is a version of, this is a restored classic. So this is a very rare. It's a very first generation. They changed a little bit after the first year or midway through the first year, and because this was maybe a touch too Americana, so it gained more of a British racing nacelle headlight setup rather than this sort of enclosed version. And this has been restored by probably the world's most foremost experts on classic Triumphs of the era, a gentleman called Dick Shepherd, who we work with a lot to do with our visitor experience. I've actually ridden this. It's amazing, just an amazing thing.
I love the look of it, and we've spoken about the classics. I suppose we should probably go and have a look at the new bikes now. So there we go, we've had the Old Testament, and now we are surrounded by the modern day Triumph range, Triumph Bonneville range, almost all of it in fact. And it's really, really obvious when you stood next to these bikes. You've got the original bike, the 59 Series 1 behind us, that you can just see the DNA sort of trickling down through the range. It's really, really obvious. And these are the new Bonnevilles, most of them. I think we're going to start off by talking about sort of the entry point into the Triumph Bonneville range, which is the Street Twin that Steve is stood next to there. So tell us about it. What's the big news that riders need to know about for 2021 with that particular model?
So with the Street Twin, as a lot of people probably know, we did an update to the Street Twin last year, where we gave it an extra 10 PS power in the engine. We moved to the Brembo brakes. So a lot of the changes performance-wise were made last year. What we've focused on this year is the cosmetics of the bike. So we've made a number of changes to the cosmetics. We've got a new side panel on the bike. We've got new throttle body covers. We've got a new seat that's also got more comfort. So it's got a comfort seat on there. We've got new headlight mount brackets. And then in terms of the technology, in fact, on all of these bikes for this year, we've got a change to the rider modes. So we've now got different traction control and ABS maps between the road and the rain riding modes. Okay,
so are they just more succinct or more subtle, or what's
so they're just
tweak?
adapted to the conditions, really.
Right.
So obviously in rain mode you get a bit more kind of intervention from the electronics to help you, just to give you that little bit of extra security in those conditions.
And that's across the range?
And that's across the range. So they've all got that change for this year.
Okay, cool. And that's going to be in dealers?
So that should be in dealers in March.
Okay. So that's the entry point. And then if you want to go a little bit extra, we've got something a little bit special over there. I was really drawn to that bike when I first walked in here this morning, and that is the Street Twin, but that's a gold line?
Yeah, so we've done a special edition for this year. We've created a unique graphic and colour scheme on the Street Twin. As you can see, it's a gold line. It's really a celebration of, you know, kind of the craftsmanship that goes into Bonnevilles, and a significant part of that craftsmanship is the gold lining. So, you know, we've got, there's only 6 people globally who do gold lining on Triumphs. And this is a celebration of that. So on this scheme, you've got a gold lining coming across down the centre of the tank. You've got a gold line around the brushed aluminium knee pad on there. And then you've got a gold line that runs around the side panel. So it's a matte black and gold scheme. I think, you know, it's kind of classic, but also contemporary at the same time. And, and I agree, I think it's really cool.
It's probably the most evocative colour scheme on the planet. I mean, it just makes me think back to, probably shouldn't say this, but JPS Lotus, the black and gold Formula One cars. And it just looks absolutely stunning in the flesh as well. That is a real peach of a bike. Specification wise, it's the same as the standard Street Twin.
So it's the same spec. It's a limited edition, so there's only 1,000 of those going to be made globally. So in each market, you're probably looking at probably less than 100 bikes in each market. So if you want to get a hold of one of these, you need to get in there fast.
Right, okay. So from the Street Twins, we are going to the T100, I believe, which is the bike that you've got there. So this is quite heavily updated for this year, isn't it? It's had quite a bit done to it.
So the T100's got more of an update to it. So again, we've got changes to the engine internals. So we've reduced the weight of the crankshaft, the clutch, and also the balancer shafts on here. So that reduces the inertia, helps the engine to spin up a little bit faster. Then we've increased the power in the engine, so we've added an extra 10 PS power in this engine. So we've made changes to the camshafts and also to the ports in the cylinder head to get the extra power out of the bike. We've gone to cartridge forks on the front end, so that gives a bit more control over the damping. Just gives a bit better control over the suspension. On the front end, we've got Brembo calipers, so we've got Brembo twin pot calipers on the front end of the bike. Then what you can see on this bike is we've got a couple of the accessory options as well. So we've got the pillion backrest on here, and we've got the fly screen as accessory options. Okay.
And with the internal changes you've made, you said that it spins up faster. It always was a really nice engine in that it was so accessible for so many riders. Have you managed to sort of keep all of that? It's got more power, it's more responsive in the mid-range and so on, but you've not lost any of that accessibility, have you?
No, not at all. So, I mean, obviously a critical part of this whole range of bikes really is that they're really super accessible for people. They're confidence inspiring to ride. They're not an intimidating motorcycle to get on. And that's one of the reasons why they're so popular across a broad range of age groups and motorcyclists. They're particularly popular with people coming into biking, people who are buying their first big bike. So that accessibility and that easy rideability is a key part really of the Bonneville range.
Cool. So from the T100 we move over to the T120, and a massive update for that bike, and probably the most significant change for me is the weight saving of that one. Is that correct, that it's lost that much weight?
Yeah, so we've got 7 kilos weight saving on the T120, we've got 4 kilos on the T100. So again, we've got the changes to the engine internals, so we've got that lightening of the crank, the clutch, the balancer shafts, and then probably a significant change on this bike is we've gone to the aluminium wheel rims.
Okay.
So we've gone away from the steel wheel rims to aluminium. Obviously that gives you a weight saving, but because you've got that rolling mass, that makes a significant difference to how the bike feels and handles. So it just makes that bike easier to turn into corners, a bit lighter steering in many ways. So that's quite a nice change on the bike. Other things that we've got on here is we've got cruise control. So we've got single button cruise control that's come onto the bike. And then obviously we've got the new colour schemes as well. So on here we've got a red and silver colour scheme, and then we also do a blue and silver scheme. Yeah. It's really nice. And then always a very popular colour, we've got the plain black. So pretty much every bike in this range you can get as standard as a jet black colour scheme, and that's always been really popular.
Cool. It does look absolutely lovely. And do you know what, you're talking about the aluminium rims in terms of the benefits of handling and everything. I think they look nicer as well. They just make it look like a proper roadster, effectively. It's a really, really pretty looking thing. And if you haven't seen it already, I think we've got some B-roll footage of it. The other colour scheme of the T120 as well looks absolutely pucker, so make sure you check that one out. And as you've got the T120, you've obviously also got the T120 Black, so all the same engine updates, reduced inertia, and you've got the blacked out colour scheme with the two-tone tank.
Yeah, so this is obviously the slightly moodier brother of the T120. You know, it's got that kind of blacked out attitude to it. New colour scheme on the tank that you can see on the one that you've got in front of you here. So we've got that black and graphite with a silver coach line. Again, nice hand-painted coach line on there. Same spec upgrades, slightly different attitude. Really nice, mean-looking motorcycle.
It does look very nice. I mean, if you're looking for somewhere to start a custom cafe racer project, this would probably be where you'd go, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you know,
it's already most of the way there.
It is, but I mean, you talk about customization, but pretty much all of these models get customized by the owners. So probably over 85% of owners of these vehicles do some kind of customization or accessorization on them. So, you know, the whole accessory part of the deal is quite a big thing on the classics.
Yep, that looks really cool. I do like that. Put my name down for a go, please. So then from the T120 Black, we move on to what is a bike that has always eluded me. I've never got to ride one yet, which is really frustrating because I think it looks brilliant, and I've ridden the bobbers. I love the way they handle and the way they look, and I really want to be able to share that with my missus. And this is the answer, the Speedmaster. What have we actually done to this bike this year, Steve?
So I've actually owned one of these bikes, and like you say, it's got that kind of attitude of the bobber. It's slightly more laid back than a bobber with those kind of swept back bars on it.
Yep.
But it is good, you know, as a two-up bike. I've toured on this bike, but what we've done with this bike is basically we've responded to some of the feedback we've had from customers in that because people do like to tour on them, they want a little bit more comfort. Okay. So we've added the comfort seats. You've got the lumbar support in the rider seat.
Yep.
Gives that nice bit of extra comfort. And then on the front end, we've now got 47mm cartridge front forks. So just gives that slightly better control over the front end of the bike, a bit better damping. Mm-hmm. So yeah, quite a nice little upgrade. And then obviously engine-wise, similar to the rest of the bikes, you've got that reduction in inertia, so it just spins up a little bit faster.
Okay, and obviously every bike we're talking about here is Euro 5 compliant, if anybody's wondering in the comments section there. And from the Speedmaster we go on to, you know, kind of the bike that everybody talks about, really. It's the one that gets a lot of headlines, and it got a lot of really, really good reviews when it was launched, and that is the Triumph Bobber. The real big news with that bike is that it is the only Triumph Bobber that you can buy from now on, isn't it? There's no Bobber Black. It is effectively Bobber Black spec.
So it's got the same front end as the Bobber Black. So it's got the front twin front discs on there.
Yep.
Again, you've got the 47mm cartridge forks on the bike. The big change on this model for this year is the fuel tank.
Right.
So again, responding to feedback from the customers, you know, we've sold a lot of these bikes. Customers absolutely love them. But the one thing they said to us, do you know what? I want to ride my bike longer.
Right.
So,
okay.
You know, we've gone for a larger fuel tank. So we've increased the fuel tank to 12 litres, just to give people an opportunity to ride their bike a little bit more.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, I had the first Bobber with the single disc, and then I went on the launch of the Bobber Black, and yeah, it is a bike that you could just sit on and ride all day. It just brings an absolute grin to your face, and when a bike makes you smile that much, you don't generally want to get off it. So there we go, we've spoken about all of the models. When can people expect to see these in their dealers?
So we're expecting all of these bikes to come into dealers in April.
Okay, cool. And we will be having a full article going up on Visordown outlining them all, and there will also be videos of each of the individual models going up in the next few days. So stay tuned, folks. Cheers.